Hyun glared at Yi-hoon and was dead serious for Yi-hoon to not accept the quest. Yi-hoon became anxious with Hyun's sudden change of mood. Hyun stuttered as he thinks of a reason to give Yi-hoon. But then Hyun became an awkward cutesy man, for he can't come up with a lie, but deep down he just didn't want to go up against Yi-hoon. But the situation just made Yi-hoon more curious with Hyun's reasons. Back to Asrian Online, Ain had no idea about the recent major quest in the game, while Hyun was terrified of the possibilities of them might facing multiple players. Back then, Hyun was able to explain himself to Yi-hoon by telling him that the risks were too high to join. But since Yi-hoon fully trusted Hyun, he instantly believed him and would even try to convince his team to back out. While Ain was being hungry for another battle with another player, Hyun felt really bad for Yi-hoon, who just treated him for another food for free. After moments of doing their duty, the suspicious man intervened to praise them for another successful night. For their third day, Ain and Hyun were given a no-infiltration reward called the Unique Sword, which was Hyun's sword. Meanwhile, there are other players across the country who just found out about the quest of annihilating Ain and Hyun. Every players were so invested with the quest, since it would give them multiple skill points just by killing off Ain and Hyun, who others thought was a pillar and a non-playable characters. But more intriguing new when rumors were spread that even top players will participate in the quest. But since Ain and Hyun are now in level 50, in order for the players to participate in the game must be at least in level 50. The quest became the most anticipated event, that it even became viral across the social media. Some players decided to back out when a news was heard that the Darkness Guild will participate in the quest. Turns out, the Darkness Guild is the current strongest guild with rankers who was ranked 2nd, 7th, and 9th in the Hall of Fame in Asrian Online. The quest became a global event that every player hoped that every player would stream their gameplay. On the 5th day, Ain and Hyun prepared for another big challenge. Ain was always prepared, but she thought of a scenario that it might just be another boring day for her. But Hyun was fully aware of the chaos they will face that night. Ain and Hyun still have some time left, until a bunch of players showed up for the quest. The two of them decided to be more careful since the players has the same level as them. As they prepare for the battle, the two of them used their assimilation and hoped for the best, since it's their last day to guard the ruins. Meanwhile, in the real world, the most anticipated quest was being broadcasted since the top players participated. There were two hosts doing the live broadcast, and the one with a blue tie was named Seongjin, and the one with a red tie was named Suyong. Seongjin wondered if one of the top players called Stardust, where Yi-hoon was a member, would also participate the quest. Back then, Yi-hoon actually convinced his team to back out since they concluded how it could give them a disadvantage and a bad image due to the high-ranked players who participated. As Seongjin called out the guilds who participated, he then announced to the viewers that the players had finally reached their destination. And the first team to arrive was called the Myth Guild, who was a country's 3rd rank. The guild's vice master was in front to guide his team. Seongjin wondered if they are the guild who would finish off the quest before darkness arrives. As Suyong observes the guild almost catching up with the darkness, he suddenly saw something unusual. Suyong witnessed that the vice commander was walking towards Ain, who mysteriously appeared in front of the guild. While Ain was terrifyingly smirking, the vice commander mistaken her as another player who joins the quest. The vice commander thought the one who's in front of him was just a newbie, but Ain seemed to be craving for a battle already. The vice commander proudly introduced himself as part of the Myth Guild, who's a 3rd ranker in Korea. Ain asked the vice commander on what his agenda could be to distract him. While the vice commander completely let his guard down by thinking Ain was somewhat innocent, he was instantly slashed. The vice commander was severely scathed, while his team was in shock to witness that their quest has already been started. Same goes to Ain and Hyun. Once Ain cuts the vice commander in half, their quest to protect the ruins had already started. The remaining time was 60 minutes, while asserted her intimidation for the players to be terrified. The Myth Guild was all scared of Ain, but then, that was their calling to kill Ain. At the first battle, Hyun lets Ain to be herself, but he promised to step in once it got dangerous. As soon as they all attack Ain all at once, Ain causes a big explosion for her to be not seen. One of the guild members thought that Ain might be one of the assassin's enemy for her skills. The guild couldn't even see Ain's movements due to her overpowered speed. All Ain did was smile through the battle, as she could brush off the long-range attacks, and even the physical attacks doesn't affect her. They still believe that Ain wasn't a user, but a humanoid monster. And one by one, the members of the guild died. They began to shiver to face their defeat in front of their eyes, until Ain appeared in front of them and calls them out for being boring. As Ain gave her all, she was considered to be a boss monster. Ain's impressive battle skills were shown at a live broadcast that even Seongjin and Suyong were speechless. The two hosts went numb and pale as they witnessed the 3rd ranker guild collapsed within a minute by the hands of Ain in an instant. Sooyoung was deeply astonished since Ain doesn't just attack her opponents, but she also used her cleverness that made her took over control the whole battle. Seongjin even thought that Ain was just an advanced artificial intelligence due to her being overpowered. Ain was too horrifying that the rest of the Myth Guild retreats. Because of the turned-out events, even one of the top guilds called H-Warring Guild backed out as they gained knowledge of how strong their opponent was. But there are still time remaining, and the battle goes on. The viewers awaits for the Darkness Guild to make their decision. But the Master of Darkness Guild went eavesdropping to observe how things will end for the Myth Guild. The Master seemed to be familiarized with Ain's presence like he had seen her before. The Darkness Guild's Master called XL actually saw the viral video of Ain and Hein. The viral video whom Tatar uploaded was named 2 members, named Boss Attack. And the viral video appeared 2 users which was Ain and Hyan. That was the time when Ain and Hyan fought against Leopard. And in the video, Ain had caught lots of attention due to her fighting skills and tactics which was unique in the eyes of the viewers. And because of Ain and Hyan's dynamics and their way of fighting, they were labeled as dark priests in the internet. XL actually thought of how powerful Ain was, until one of his members asked him if he still wishes to continue. And that guild member was a vice leader named Rian. XL responds to her that they only have a 50% chance on winning against Ain and Hein. XL still thoroughly decides whether they should continue or not, though in the first place they knew the quest won't be easy since the reward would be skill points. Until then, XL decided to give it a shot and take the risk even though they only have 50% of winning. He then ordered Rian to call all of their members. While Ain awaits, the timer showed that they only have 40 mini left. Ain became a bit arrogant for wishing their next opponent would be stronger unlike the Myth Guild, while Hyan was being cautious and concerned for Ain who might let her guard down. Until Hyan noticed the next guild who's slowly approaching them. Their next opponent seemed to be more serious and controlled based on how Hyan noticed their movements. Hyan thought it might be a world's rank guild due to the guild's intimidating presence. Hyan also noticed the guild to have only 1 vanguard. As their next opponent arrived in front of them, the guild members were summoning a spell. The guild members were also focused and prepared. Turns out, the members were all aiming to give their buffs to their only vanguard. The vanguard twirls his staff, the aura intensified. He felt so light and different as he walked towards Ain. Then a woman named Piaz was called to make the first attack since the buff would only last for 5 minutes. Piaz was revealed to be a Darkness Guild member whose guild was a world 9th ranker. Piaz dashed her body and compromised her guild that she would finish the quest immediately. Piaz was overly confident that Ain and Hyan might have not thought that Piaz was planning to absorb their buff. Piaz knew she was gonna win since her members helped her skills to be buffed in a highest level. Piaz thought Ain won't be able to match her speed until she saw Ain unexpectedly coming right against her. Piaz panicked as the spell began to cancel just because Ain got too close to her. She couldn't figure out how it happened. Piaz trembled as she realized her moves was quickly responded by Ain. Ain looked back with a devilish looks on her face while Piaz starts to overthink that Ain might have a higher agility than her. Meanwhile, Ain was lectured by Hyan for getting too close instead of being slightly close. Ain was reckless for being too hungry to annihilate Piaz. Hyan became an understanding partner and just let Ain do what she pleases, but he promised to stoop in if things got way out of hand. While Piaz was battling against Ain, some of the Darkness Guild members watched as their fight and thought it would be impossible for Piaz to not able to push Ain back despite all the buffs. Until they witnessed that Piaz was in a disadvantaged situation. The Darkness Guild noticed that Piaz might lose, until Rihanna reacted and called a member named Mayday to step in to support Piaz. While Ain was just chilling by letting Piaz attack all ineffectively. Hyan just watched the battle and was relieved to see Ain doing better than he expected. He then yelled at Ain to warn her about the magic he sensed underneath Ain. Since Ain was distracted for a brief moment, Piaz took the chance to finally counterattack the Ain. Ain realized she was too reckless for being too focused on a one-on-one battle that she forgot to watch her blind spot. Until Hyan took over Ain's body. Rihanna saw Mayday suffering from a mysterious weight that made her sit like she was glued on the ground. Piaz went numb and shocked with the sudden response, while Hyan smirked as he made his promise to step in once the battle goes out of hand. Hyan uses the 1-second absorption while Ain was deeply grateful to see Hyan being by her side. Since Piaz fainted due to the 1-second absorption, it was Ain's chance to finally finish her battle against Piaz. Ain dashes her body with such abnormal speed, while Piaz was still struggling to move her own body. On that short moment, Piaz already knew she was about to die, while Ain showed zero mercy nor sympathy, as she uses her claws being lit up with flames with her ability move called the Powerless Wave, until Piaz was defeated right in front of the Darkness Guild. While Rihanna comforts Mayday, who was also affected by the 1-second absorption, XL spoke up to give his members a courage. XL reminded his team that they are still standing and would still give their best shot for their next plan. And for Ain and Hyan's next opponent, they noticed that the next one was a tanker who's also receiving buffs from the members. Hyan also checks up on Ain if she has any mana left, but Ain seemed to have more as she drank up an elixir. Ain admits that she had used most of her mana before, but then she assures that she just drank the weak heavens elixir for a backup. Ain went nuts as soon as he consumed all the elixir. She even asked Hyan if she could use her ultimate all of a sudden. Ain's health points has been temporarily increased into 20,000 points, wherein her mana recovery rate has increased to 10 times over. Hyan was deeply worried that Ain might do something reckless since they have been planning to save Ain's ultimate in their next quest, but Ain doesn't wish to listen on Hyan's opinion. Ain was too overwhelmed, like she was overdosed with the elixir. She instantly dashes against the tanker. On the other hand, the Darkness Guild believed that Ain must be tired after fighting Pias. The tanker holds still as he recites that Ain was no match for the world-ranked 7th, Bear Shield. But then the tanker realized that Ain still has her powers left, and it was even increased. Until Ain killed the tanker with one blow. The rest of the Darkness Guild were all mystified by Ain. They didn't expect that despite giving the shield all kinds of buffs, yet Ain was able to finish off the tanker in a second. Ain became so devilish and reckless that she began to use her awakening skill. The tanker was so defenseless that he died in an instant. Even Seongjin was in shock to witness that the Dark Guild's well-known Bear Shield was defeated with one attack. Ain was surrounded by overwhelming flames, while the hosts of the broadcast noticed that Ain was going towards the Darkness Guild's whereabouts. Sooyoung was also pressured, and knew things won't end well for the Darkness Guild since Ain was also clever. While everyone was deeply terrified of Ain, Ain felt so joyous to think that the second phase of the boss battle has begun. Every members of the Darkness Guild became so focused and prepared. XL noticed that the vice leader Rihanna hasn't given up yet. Rihanna was yelling to her heart for her team to keep distance or else they'll be affected by Ain's attack. XL felt all the guilt since it was his methods was used in the battle. He felt so guilty for miscalculating. XL knew Ain was a monster. He even accepted his guild's fate. Until Mayday stepped in to volunteer to contribute for her team. Mayday puts a pride on her soul to at least try her best. Mayday learned from her earlier mistake. When Hyan uses his 1-second absorption, she will make sure to be more prepared than ever. The guild uses one of their members to distract Ain by throwing multiple daggers against her. But then Hyan took over Ain's body and was able to react quickly due to his improved reflexes. Hyan proudly flexes his ability to Ain and for her to trust him by taking care of the long-range attacks. Hyan also noticed that the enemies were now aiming for their blind spot. Hyan instantly took over Ain's body once again and was able to dodge a large clear spear coming from their behind. Mayday was deeply terrified of Ain. She felt like they just made a fool out of themselves. Mayday wondered how did Ain just dodge their huge spear, until Ain glared back at her, until Ain went closer to Mayday to finish her off. All Mayday could think about was how Ain figured out her methods, but all she saw was her last moments in the quest. The guild witnessed another horrifying events when Mayday just lost in front of them. They even got more scared to witness Ain being able to dodge. XL finally admits being defeated that he called for Rihanna to retreat with the rest of the members. Until then, the Darkness Guild lost while Ain and Hyan are once again victorious. The two of them briefly celebrated for their success as soon as they saw the guild walking away. But before they celebrate, Hyan asked permission to take control of Ain's body. Because on their last day of guarding the ruins, Hyan heard something about the quest that was similar to Asray Online. The two of them gazes on the beaming light while Hyan explained that something was about to transform. In front of the beaming light was the suspicious man. The suspicious man laughed hysterically as his body was finally being filled with the lights of the heaven. Until Ain approaches the suspicious man before he even done something malicious. Ain smirked while the suspicious man kept yelling at her to guard the entrance. The suspicious man even thought of threatening Ain despite using all of his strength. But Ain doesn't want to listen since her and Hyan followed their gut feeling that the suspicious man shouldn't be trusted. The suspicious man felt like all of his efforts were nothing just to be finished off by Ain. He was so close, but Ain doesn't want to give him a chance to give him what he wanted. As soon as Ain attacked the suspicious man, all of a sudden he disappeared. Ain and Hyan finds it weird to see the suspicious man disappeared, until the purple light also disappeared and revealed an item in between. The item was revealed to be called as the Fragment of the Heavens, which Hyan was looking for all this time. Based in the statistics, Ain and Hyan was the first one to gain the fragment. As they obtained the fragment, it suddenly released a full amount of energy. Even Ain could feel the power she was just absorbing. The game began to show all notifications that Ain and Hyan was the first one to obtain such hidden treasure. The game also realized that not only Ain was the one who had obtained it since it recognized Ain's vessel to have one more soul. The game updated its recognition that it was certified that Ain and Hyan finally obtained the title of Heavenly Being. The two of them felt like a champion on that moment, until Hyan laughed hysterically and so ugly that Ain became conscious since Hyan was using her body. The two of them had increased their resistance to cold up to 50%, and same goes to lightning. But based on the status report, something more special might happen for the two of them. Meanwhile, a random viewer of the live broadcast was intrigued by Ain. The viewer was an ex-SRA player who goes by the name Steel Rock, but he still believed that Ain must be a non-playable character. Even an SRA player was intimidated by Ain's skills and abilities. But as he observes all the tactics, he felt deja vu was kicking in. Steel Rock felt like he had faced a boss like Ain back in SRA. He quickly zoomed in to see a better portrait of Ain, until he finally realized that Ain, who was in a werewolf form before, was a girl. Meanwhile, on the Darkness Guild's side, they were all mourning for their defeat. XL still blamed himself as he felt all the guilt for dragging his team, until he got a notification that he just mysteriously cleared the quest. Everyone was in shock even though they are fully aware they just backed out a minute ago. The next day on Asrian Online, Steel Rock was spreading a rumor that he just figured out that Ain was a woman. His friend even became more curious on how did he discover that Ain was the girl back in the ruins. Steel Rock confidently explained that he was certain that it was Ain based on her methods and movements. Steel Rock's friend named Berard, who was also an ex-SRA player, shared his experience against Ain, and he confessed that he also lost multiple times against her. Steel Rock and Berard felt so ashamed and depressed as they realized they just lost against a girl. Steel Rock didn't expect for Ain to be a woman since he always thought Ain would look like a berserker or a buffed man. In Berard's conclusion, he thought Ain might have modified her character. But Ain's character appearance wasn't the issue for Berard. Berard had observed that the users who played SRA before were growing online at an incredible pace, and not just Ain. Berard personally knew some of the ex-SRA users, and most users who they aren't aware of. Berard's aware of the fact that some ex-SRA users could grow wildly depending on how much information they have back in SRA. But for Steel Rock, Ain started playing at the same time with them. Yet Ain had grown to be such an impressive player. And because of Ain's performance, they wondered how Hyan was doing. Steel Rock became unsettled as soon as he heard one of the best-known SRA players, which was Hyan. Berard was well aware of Hyan's reputation back in SRA. He knew Hyan would grow such an impressive player like Ain, especially that he's now a player in Asrian Online. Berard could already imagine the future outcomes for Hyan and Ain if they continued being a dynamic in the game. He knew the two of them would create such big impact, especially with the combination of their abilities and skills. Steel Rock felt so intimidated that he felt like losing an energy playing the game. Berard just looked on the other side by believing the judgment of other players that Ain and Hyan aren't playing together. Steel Rock then just invited Berard to hunt with him. Even with such downer emotions, Steel Rock and Berard kept moving forward to avoid being left behind. Meanwhile, a user was also intrigued with Ain's battle skills. The user wondered how Ain could possibly block all the attacks coming from her blind spot. But based on the host from the live broadcast named Suyong, he believed that only an artificial intelligence could be so powerful, yet he looked so unsettled and not sure. And that curious user was Yihoon. As he watches Ain's battle against the guild, he could sense that something was off about Ain. Yihoon noticed the countless times Ain had showed emotions and multiple teasing against her enemy. Yihoon was well aware that those kinds of attitude were very human-like. Yihoon also noticed Ain who effectively dealt with long-range attacks, and not just because there were openings. But also, he noticed Ain's mentality, tactics, and methods were something that a human could train for. Yihoon was in a hurry due to his team's trainee evaluation that will occur in 3 days. And the solution he could come up with was to analyze Ain's battle tactics to apply it to himself. Back to Asra Online. The Darkness Guild was gathered for an announcement. They were all in shock as they found out that Ain was a user after all and not a non-playable character. Even XL felt so awkward as he broke the news to his team. The night after their battle against Ain, XL thoroughly analyzes the notification he received from the game. At first, they were all happy until XL checked the system log and noticed something strange. XL saw the system log to have a contribution rate that was off. Everything's status was adding up, yet their guild didn't even reach 10%. Until XL realized that the rest of the contribution might have gone to Ain and Hyan, since non-playable characters shouldn't get a percentage since they aren't a user. After the realization, XL was sure that Ain was a user after all. XL had a shocking revelation moment when he finally realized that Ain and Hyan, which they aren't aware of, was also a user who received an opposite quest. XL concluded that their differences from the opponents must have came from above, and the quest was just a hidden job and wasn't a dark priest's job after all. Because of Ain's performance, Rihanna had an idea of making Ain join their guild. XL was delighted to hear Rihanna's idea since he was thinking the same thing. They knew Ain would be a great asset for their team, that they thought they should immediately convince Ain before every users realized that Ain wasn't an artificial intelligence nor a non-playable character. XL informed his guild that Ain should be their top priority at the moment. Back to real life where Hyan was slurping his ramen. He reviewed all the comments and preview from their battle against the guilds. Hyan noticed that most viewers still thought Ain's job was a dark priest. As he read the comments, Hyan was relieved that he wasn't the center of attraction. Hyan wondered how Ain thinks since she became famous lately, until Hyan received a notification regarding the Asrian Online's new update. The Asrian Online added a dual arena that will be available from then on. The Asrian Online even gave users an opportunity to meet other users across the country. But all Hyan could think of was Ain's emotions being too overwhelmed since Ain loved getting into a match. Hyan felt like everything's gonna get serious since Asrian's main story was about to start. Hyan decided to log in since he'll be busy after the patch. Hyan wondered if he should go hunting for a patch, but then he saw an unread message. Hyan was saddened when he read his messages regarding Ain who won't be able to log in for 2 days. Ain also reminded him not level up too much, especially when she's gone temporarily. Hyan had a downer emotion, since Ain, who's a damage dealer, and him rely on each other. But Hyan thought of the brighter side, that it was a good timing that Ain won't be hanging around before the patch launches. Hyan decided to go for the quests he received after he reached level 50. Later that day, Hyan went to the Temple of Twilight. As Hyan walked in, it was the first time he felt unfamiliar with the place that wasn't similar back in Asra. Hyan thought that the place must be unimportant since he couldn't remember the place being similar to Asra, but Hyan had no choice but to come to the place since the area was marked on his hidden job awakening quest. At first, Hyan was planning to clear the quest as soon as possible, but then he noticed the place that seemed like ruins. The more Hyan analyzes the places, the weirder it becomes. All of a sudden, Hyan saw the woman in front of him. The woman gave a jolly presence as soon as Hyan noticed her. The woman welcomed Hyan's arrival, while Hyan thought of the woman as a priest who wore such fashionable clothing. The woman guided Hyan inside the Temple of Twilight. The atmosphere seemed calm, but Hyan had an unsettling intuition as he goes further inside the temple. Hyan held a conversation with the woman to make his situation a little less weirder by asking the woman if she holds a high position, judging by her clothes being different from others. The woman responded that she just modified her clothes to make it look pretty. The woman laughed it all off while Hyan still feels strange, especially as he could observe that something was off with the woman's facial expressions. As Hyan goes further, the game notified him that he has finally reached the Temple of Twilight. The game hoped that Hyan finds his true self. The woman insisted to inspect Hyan's soul since he already awakened his abilities. Hyan just let the woman do as she pleases even though he doesn't fully trusted her. The woman's staff suddenly glows red as she activated her mana. The game then revealed that the woman's name was Rusha, the priestess of Twilight. As Rusha inspects Hyan's soul, she promised to not reveal the information to other people. Rusha concentrates as she does her job, while Hyan hoped that Rusha finds something special since Hyan's awakened is a hidden class. Until Rusha reacted when she realized Hyan was a support. Hyan was startled and began to overthink that something might be wrong with his soul. But Rusha just overreacted because it was her first time to inspect someone with such unique class. Hyan began to be annoyed that he decided to leave instead. But the soul inspection wasn't done yet. Rusha got Hyan's attention as she asked Hyan if he wishes to know what empathy was. Hyan assumed that it was just a special status for supports, but Rusha believed that Hyan hasn't dug deeper about the meaning of empathy. Rusha then recommended for them to go back to the Transcendent in order for Hyan to understand more about empathy. The game then explained the meaning of Transcendent. Based in Asrian Online, the Transcendent are beings that exist in a higher plane than humans. They are often known as angels or demons, and empathy is closely related to Transcendent. Back to Hyan and Rusha's conversation, Rusha explained that the Transcendent need to receive empathy from the prayers of mortals in order to bestow boons or prophecies that affected the world. With a creepy and forcible way, Rusha tried to convince Hyan to learn how to pray, until a side quest appeared about the odd priestess Rusha's proposition. The game also gave Hyan a trick information that it might be a waste of time to pray with Rusha. Hyan thinks the situation was unusual. He starts to believe that the side quest might be a waste of time, but he would rather give it a shot since Rusha brought up his status. Despite being nervous and uneasy, Hyan went along with Rusha. Rusha mentioned again that those who prayed will be blessed boons and prophecies in return, and the prayers with those who has high empathy could reach the Transcendent more easily. However, based on Rusha's knowledge, a human's empathy was already set at birth that priests and priestess needed to undergo painstaking ordeals to raise it. But Hyun was lucky that he was able to raise his status, that Rusha thinks of it as a blessing. Hyun still has no idea what will be the outcome after the praying process. He then sarcastically hoped that he won't be praying while playing as a support. Rusha could notice that Hyun still had doubts, but she reminded Hyun that he is someone that has the potential to call upon angels and demons in the future. To convince Hyun, Rusha recalls a story of the priest lost in a prayer. That goes about the priest that prays all day, until one day, the priest accidentally fell asleep during prayer. Rusha revealed that the priest claimed to be transported into a different place as she slowly showed her dark persona. While Hyun was participating in the prayer, Rusha asked if HR wishes to visit the place where the priest went into. As soon as Hyun opened his eyes, the atmosphere became darker. He thought he might have fallen asleep as well. Hyun was still at the temple, but the atmosphere were dim and the skies were red, and the sun was black. Behind Hyun, Rusha appeared all of a sudden. She mentioned the priest again that went to the same place. She also mentioned that the priest in her story had secrets. Rusha revealed that the priest in her story served a demon instead of an angel. The priest began to empathize with a demon during a prayer, until the priest's consciousness slipped through a world closer to the demons. Since there's already a place closer to heaven, it is not impossible to have a place closer to demons. Rusha confirmed that the eerie place they'd went to was closer to hell than heaven. Rusha also confessed that her prayers before had reached the demons. Hyun felt so uncomfortable to be closer to hell, and asked Rusha if he'll be able to return to the real world. Even though Rusha seemed so unusual, she delightedly responded to Hyun that it's possible for him to return to the real world. Until Hyun woke up to the same spot he was in the temple, and behind him was Rusha, who guided him throughout his experience. Rusha hoped that Hyun found some motivation through their scary journey. Even though Hyun was uncomfortable throughout his experience, he thought how interesting it was since the prayers offered an unexplored realm. Rusha gave Hyun an advice on how to properly pray, even though praying wasn't a difficult concept after all. In order to pray, Hyun must empty his mind while not losing himself to subconscious thoughts. Until the game notified Hyun that he just gained a praying skill, which he could pray from anywhere he can, but he must sincerely pray for the skill to be effective. But the praying skill was too mentally challenging for Hyun. Hyun needed to maintain a state of mind that teeters on the edge of falling asleep, but good thing that the side quest offers Hyun to be taught on how to pray. Hyun learned something new, but he became more curious with Rusha's identity. With a dark glare in her eyes, Rusha only told Hyun that she's just a normal priest, while Hyun wondered if she's another demon worshipper. Hyun was bewildered as he thought of Asra being the same as Asrian online. While Hyun tried to concentrate while praying, he has a theory that Asrian is a symmetrical world from Asra, created as a new realm. While praying, Hyun seemed to be getting it while his aura intensified as he prays. On his second try of praying, his skills proficiency has reached to 100%, and his praying skills leveled up to level 1. But praying wasn't just all about mentality. Shen Hyun had difficulties in his breathing. Even though Hyun was having a hard time, his status goes up that his praying skills gone up to level 2. He knew praying would be difficult since he kept overthinking about his new discovered ability, until Hyun was slowly empathizing with a nearby transcendent. After praying, Hyun was transported into a gloomy temple. It was midnight as he walked forward in an empty temple. At some time, from somewhere, Hyun started walking, with no clear purpose. It was like Hyun has no conscience at all. He kept walking until he faced a door from room at one point. Hyun stepped in, showing no emotions nor expressions at all. But in that room, his eyes became wide open when Hyun saw a person being chained from their foot. And that person seemed to be a little girl with bruises. But it became weirder when the little girl was sitting in the middle of a biblical symbol. The little girl was startled. She tried to speak up, but she seemed traumatized. Hyun was deeply worried to witness a little girl caught in such an inhumane act. Hyun also noticed that the little girl's eyes were out of focus, that she might be under an abnormal spell since she still had conscience. Hyun wondered what could be the reason for a kid to be chained up in such gloomy and depressing place. But importantly, Hyun wondered how he ended up in a weird place. But due to his conscience, he decided to take care of the situation first. Until two priests arrived. Hyun immediately hides inside a closet while eavesdropping on the two priests with wands in their hand. The two priests starts doing some incantations while their wands were summoning a power. Hyun was deeply unsettled and curious about the purpose of the priest's wand. Hyun assumes that the spell might be a mind-controlling skill that was used against the little girl. The little girl felt so uncomfortable as she absorbs the power. Hyun also noticed the magic circles being used up against the little girl. Hyun felt so disgusted to witness a child being abused, even though everything was just from a video game. The two priests finally left the room. It was Hyun's chance to investigate the situation. Hyun tried to wake the little girl up, but the little girl was still out of her mind, like her state just got worsened after the spell. Hyan looked up from his items that might help the girl. He then found an elixir even though he was saving it, but he didn't mind just so it could save the little girl. The dark color from the little girl's eyes slowly fades away, until it goes red, showing that she's slowly being in control of herself. The little girl began to talk while Hyan was relieved that he just saved the girl from such abnormal magic. Hyan then grabbed his dagger as he aimed for the chains on the little girl's foot. With one slash, the chain broke. The little girl became so jolly that Hyan just saved her, while Hyan was warning the little girl to be a little quiet. Hyan looked through the door to analyze if someone was coming by. But then Hyan heard a growl from the little girl's tummy out from hungry. The little girl acted so cutely as she asked Hyan for food she could eat. Hyan then brought out a piece of bread which the game gave him when he created the character. The little girl was willing to buy the bread. Hyan just randomly told the little girl that the bread costs 10 golds. The little girl searched in her pocket. But unfortunately, the little girl had no money in her hands. Hyan already expected the girl having 0 items for survival. Hyan just gave another opportunity to the little girl by exchanging her necklace to Hyan's bread. The little girl began crying mutinously like the necklace was deeply precious for her. Hyan could handle to see the little girl crying. He instead hoped that the little girl could pay him later on. Hyan felt bad as she watches the little girl enjoys every bite of her bread. The little girl then introduced herself as Louise. On Hyan's judgment, the name Louise was something he had never heard back in Astra, but he thought of the name to be someone who's noble. Hyan still had no idea what his main quest was, until a notification popped that his main quest was to save Louise, who has been trapped by unknown people, but no reward was stated in the notification. Hyan felt so suspicious for a game to give him a quest even before Louise asked for help. He assumed that Louise might not be a simple supporting non-playable character. Hyan asked Louise if she wishes to leave the place. Louise became so jolly and delighted to hear that Hyan was willing to help her. But due to her trauma, she couldn't help but cry after all the traumatic experiences she had gone through. Hyan sympathizes with the poor little girl. Even though the situation was super strange for Hyan, he was still willing to help Louise get out of the weird temple. But Hyan had a genuine intention. Even if the situation wasn't a quest, he'd still be willing to save the little girl. The game declared that Hyan finally accepted the quest. Later that night, Hyan got out of the temple by carrying Louise in his arms. He felt relieved that no one was roaming around at night. Based on Hyan's judgment, the area seemed to not from another world. Until an entity appeared from his back, with strange red eyes as it threatened Hyan. Hyan instantly looked behind. But no one was found, yet he felt the terrifying presence of someone. Hyan just assumed that he must be imagining things. Hyan knew the place wasn't safe despite no one was seen guarding the temple. He then asked Louise if she could run fast enough. Louise confessed that she uses wind magic that makes her decently fast. The two of them dashed without leaving each other behind. Hyan was amazed that Louise was able to keep up with him despite her using a magic. Luckily, Louise still has enough health points to move forward with Hyan. Strangely, Hyan noticed that they haven't gone far from the temple despite running for 20 minutes. He then called for Louise to stop running. Hyan realized that they have been running in circles. Hyan wasn't sure nor he couldn't explain the situation, but the path seemed to be endless, until a bright light shines upon the two of them. Hyan overthinks the situation that they might have been caught by the people in the temple. But then he heard Louise's voice calling him to hold a grip of himself. In front of them, there was a forest opening a path. Hyan thought that someone must be helping the two of them when the path appeared out of the blue. Hyan wondered about the purpose of the quest. That night, Hyan and Louise kept running as soon as the place gave them a path. Hyan wondered if Louise has a destination in mind since they've kept running, yet they don't where they'll go. Louise felt bad that she thought she couldn't help by thinking any place, but Hyan understood her well. Luckily, they spotted a closest town called the Lakatra Castle. Hyan thought they should go for a stop. Hyan wanted to make sure that the two of them should be able to cross the forest through the nearest town, as he hoped the two of them won't get caught. A magic light was seen in the middle of the forest trying to aim the two of them. Their escape plan turned into panic as soon as they were being ambushed. But then, the magic had almost catched Louise. Louise was hit by the mystery wand that made her stumbled on the ground. She cried from pain while her vision turned dizzy, but Hyan calls for her name to get her back to her senses. Moments before, Hyan was able to protect Louise by using his 1-second absorption shield, yet Louise still felt that she was hit. Hyan could tell that the range of their opponent's attack was way faster than the named boss leopard. From a distance, Hyan could sense that their two opponents aren't priests at all. He assumed that it must be an assassin with a level around 200 or higher. Hyan could sense that the opponents were much stronger, that if he attempted to engage it, he wouldn't win. Louise felt like her trauma was triggered, while Hyan hoped she got back from her senses. As the enemies approaches them, Hyan pulled his dagger to prepare for a sparring. Hyun gave Louise an instruction that once he made a signal, the two of them must escape with everything they have. Hyun then uses his vision sword against his two opponents. Hyun yelled at Louise to run away as he slashed his dagger from the ground. Because of Hyun's vision sword, he was able to create a huge explosion that distracted the enemies to make Hyun and Louise out of their sight. After the fogs and dirt fades away, Hyun and Louise was nowhere to be found. Hyun was smart enough that he chose to not fight with the enemies, especially the two of them were at a disadvantage. Hyun hoped they could still have more time, but all of a sudden the assassins popped up. The girl assassin counterattacked as soon as she arrived at the scene. Hyun tried to block the attack while running away at the same time. He knew he doesn't have a chance to win. Hyun was stressed out by making Louise be protected his priority while fighting against the opponents, but not only that, their speed had also decreased. Hyun then thought of an idea. Hyun asked for Louise's consent if he could use her body for assimilation. But then it got weird since Hyun suddenly asked a child to borrow her body. Even Hyun was in shock as he realized how weird it was. Good thing, Louise fully trusted Hyun to make their situation less hassle. Hyun was glad that he was able to use his awakened ability with Louise. The game then notified that the assimilation was consented. Hyun's soul immediately collaborated with Louise's body. As Hyun collided with Louise, he saw Louise's status being at level 35. But the problem was, Louise doesn't have any attack skills. But for Hyun, it was a great asset that he was able to assimilate with Louise to make their situation less heavy. Since they assimilated, Hyun doesn't have to worry about the time delays and gaps to protect Louise every time they separate. But it was also a good thing that Louise has a skill for Hyun to use as a defense to avoid the attacks. But due to Louise's condition, it was hard for Hyun to keep up if they kept going on, or else Louise's magical power will plummet. And before it plummets, Hyun must shook off their opponents. Hyun uses an ability called the Giant's Lungs named Gorge to flew away. As he uses Gorge, the assassins were left behind. Hyun took advantage of the moment when the assassins got left behind and instantly got out of the assimilation with Louise. Hyun made sure that the assassins won't commit a long-range attack, while the assassin immediately pulled her weapon. Hyun quickly responds by using his 1-second absorption shield. As usual, if the opponent were affected by Hyun's 1-second absorption, they will faint in the middle of the fight. While the woman assassin was vulnerable, Hyun kicked her to fall from the lake. While Louise dashes away, Hyun looked for the other assassin. But then the other assassin seemed to be holding a bomb. It turns out, it was just a flare to summon more of his comrades. The assassin walked away while Hyun overthinks that more people will go against them. But despite the fact that they'll be facing more chaos, the two of them decided to rest for a while. As they rest, Hyun thought of going to the Lakatra castle later on. But then Louise spoke up and told Hyun that the sun must not touch her. Louise revealed that there was a special tracking magic placed on her. It was a magic that makes her power shine when touched by the sun. Louise favored Hyun that they must go to a place where the sun won't meet her or somewhere dark. Because of Louise's information, Hyun changed his mind by going to another town instead. Hyun held Louise's hand to convince her that they must find another location. As they continued to escape, Hyun actually has a knowledge about Louise's problem. The magic placed on Louise was called the Stigma of Light. The Stigma of Light is a unique skill that non-playable characters like angels and demons were the only one who has access. But Hyun was curious about why was the magic used against the child. As Hyun served as Louise's guidance and protector, Hyun decided to go to a place that isn't touched by the sun. Hyun and Louise found a dark place to stay for a while. It was a cave where lots of water drips in. The two of them feel safe inside the dungeon. While Louise fell asleep on Hyun's lap, Hyun stayed awake to make sure she was completely safe. Moments before they decided to stay in the dungeon, Louise was afraid to go such creepy cave. Despite being terrified to be in a dungeon, Louise trusted Hyun and followed him in the end. Their agenda was to only take a break for a while, but Louise seemed to be worn out and tired from all the running. As they went to the dungeon, Hyun's quest changed by instructing him to take Louise into the nearest town with no rewards in return. Hyun still wondered why he was doing all the good deeds when he should be training in the first place. After playing for hours, Hyun decided to rest as well. Hyun then entered rest mode back to the real world. Meanwhile, on the game developer's side, the casualty of the game had gone -82%. Due to the casualty, the Assyrian online development coup named Kwon Dio confirmed that they couldn't launch the patch. Due to his investigation, something was interfering the game that became a barrier to the flow of Assyrian's main story. Based on Dio's statistics, the number of people, atmosphere, religion, economy, history, and language, the many variables that compose Assyrian are fluctuating. Dio was still puzzled how things didn't go as they planned, until his subordinate barged in to report about the interference in the game. Diho almost choked by his drink while his subordinate still made an urgent report. Diho was in disbelief when the woman reported about the cause of delaying the patch was because of a single user. The woman then showed a video clip where Louise was running away. The developers found out that a user, which was Hein, assimilated into Louise, who's a non-playable character. Diho and the woman had a brief laugh to witness such interesting player. Diho decided to check into more details about Hein. Diho finally connected the dots about the reason why the variables started to go crazy. It was all because of the quest connected to Louise. Diho wasn't actually mad. He was amazed that a single user was able to delay the patch because of the quest. Diho decided to launch the patch after Hein cleared the quest. The woman asked Diho to reassure if he pleases to move the day of the patch release, but Diho doesn't actually mean to move the exact date of the release. Diho just wishes to release the patch right after Hein cleared the quest, but the rest of the developers couldn't understand Diho's agenda. Diho then went along with the rest of the developers to help them fix the issue. Hein logged back in after he took a rest, and the first thing that approached him was Louise crying her heart out since Hein was missing. Louise thought he was abandoned, that she couldn't stop crying. But in the real world, Hein actually has a class. He thought of checking in class for attendance, then returned to the game. Hein thought of his decision thoroughly and hoped Louise could wait for him. But when he checked his monitor, Louise already woken up, being anxious due to Hyen's absence. Hyen decided to skip class. Hyen couldn't handle the thought of leaving the little girl alone in the dungeon, especially when Louise was afraid at the place. Hyen hoped he did the right thing. Even though Louise was just an artificial intelligence, she still looked like a child to take care of. Hyen jokingly told Louise that he actually planned on leaving her. As they sit in the dungeon, Louise confessed that she was deeply uncomfortable to stay. He asked Hyen if they could go out for a while. But Hyen thought it would be a bad idea to go out since they managed to lose their trail from the assassins, who has a very strong rouge type. Louise even became more anxious when Hyen explained that a high-class assassin were able to trace them by their footsteps, and the possibility that the assassins awaits for them on the entrance of the dungeon. After Hyen traumatized Louise by his theory, he comforted her by telling Louise that no one probably knows about the dungeon better than him. Since they've been together for a brief time, Louise was curious about Hyen's name. Hyen introduced himself to Louise. The two of them went to explore the dungeon. As they walked together, Hyen starts a conversation by asking Louise about the way she speaks. Hyen actually finds the way Louise speaks weird. He even wondered if Louise was actually a noble kid. Due to Louise's childhood, she developed to have no self-awareness at all, until the two of them reached the edge of the cliff. Louise took a closer look at the edge and shared her thoughts that something was strange in front of her. Louise finds it weird that Hyen pointed the ground and calls it a road. But Hyen actually pointed at the better point of view that they aren't actually going down, but go up the cliff that's far away from their whereabouts. For Louise to understand how they'll be able to go up the cliff, Hyen explained something called centrifugal force. As Hyen activated the assimilation skill, he explained that since they're in a cylindrical cave, they could use the centrifugal force. In short, Hyen wishes for the two of them to ascend and jump to a higher rate in order to succeed. Louise was too terrified to do Hyen's daredevilish plan that she considered Hyen to be a demon. All of a sudden, Hyen jumped off the cliff. Louise screams as Hyen manipulated her body to ascend. Hyen dared Louise to open her eyes for her to witness that his plan was effective after all. As Louise opened her eyes, Hyen explained that the centrifugal force happens when you quickly run around in a circle, so once they slow down, they'll fall. That was the reason why Hyen increased their speed with magic. The scared Louise shifts into a trusting and calm companion when Hyen advises he to take a risk. The two of them reach the cliff they wishes to get into while Hyen got out of the assimilation. Louise felt relieved that she could feel her body normally. Hyen advises Louise to stand up immediately for them to stroll more in the dungeon, yet they must not go out yet or else they'll be trapped by their opponents. In front of Hyen, there was a bright and shiny door that could help Hyen and Louise to prepare. Louise finds the door to be aesthetically magnificent that doesn't suit in dark dungeon. Louise wondered where the door could lead them onto. As Hyen entered, the atmosphere became calm and comforting. Even Louise was delighted that she jumped and laid on the mattresses. The place was filled with incredible and luxurious things that Louise had never seen before. Even Hyen was glad that Louise felt delighted. The place they'd entered was called the dungeon's interior secret shop. The shop was a secret place that not even most Asrao rankers knew about. The shop was a safe place that couldn't be reached by monsters, and at the same time, players could buy such rare items. While Hyen was busy shopping to buy more gears, Louise kept annoying him by asking multiple questions. Hyen got no choice but to buy a kid's meal for 1 gold so Louise would be distracted. Hyen was looking for an item that could help him and Louise go through multiple enemies that they couldn't dealt with. Hyan then purchased the necessary preparations. Hyan believes that he needed to be able to use all of the surroundings and even use their opponent's strength. The preparations were finally done, but Louise wasn't done munching her food. Hyan then informed Louise to get ready as they leave the dungeon at night since they'll be easily spotted if the sun was up. As they rest for a while, the only priority Hyan has in his mind was to get Louise out of the chaos alive. After they took a rest, the two of them assimilated again. As Louise goes forward, Hyan mutinously reminded her about their plan in order to get away. But Louise seemed to be a little scared. Louise had doubts, but Hyan assures her that he is a user in the game. Since Louise was already attached, she asked if Hyan wishes to stay with her if ever they managed to come out alive. Louise shivered when Hyan became straightforward that it won't be possible if he stayed with Louise. Louise cried when she realized that she'll depart from Hyan as soon as the quest was cleared. Hyan also felt bad, but he knew it was the right thing to not sugarcoat an answer to a kid. Hyan also realized that as soon as the patch releases, 5 years will pass inside the game. Hyan informed Louise that they won't be able to see each other for 5 years. Louise became depressed that she won't be able to see her hero. As she walked forward, something bright had caught her eyes. Louise found the stairs that would lead them out of the dungeon. As she goes up, Louise finds it strange that she couldn't see the end, but Hyan warned her that they'll meet a lot of traps and that they must be careful. Until a bunch of bombs appeared from above. Louise was too mesmerized and distracted that she couldn't sense that a threat just appeared on top of her. Turns out, a bunch of assassins were waiting for them at the top. They were all furious and wishes nothing but death for Louise. Luckily, Hyan used the Blood Fairy's cape for Louise to ascend past the assassin. Louise was in panic, while Hyan informed her that they must execute the plan immediately since he couldn't block the bombs. Hyan hoped Louise goes back to her senses because of her poor reflexes whenever she meets a threat. Hyan then guided Louise to step on a foothold immediately. And by that, Hyan triggered the stairs to crumble that could possibly confuse the assassins for a bit. Hyan advises Louise that she must not stop moving no matter what since he'll deal with the attacks coming from their behind. Louise ran quickly as she can. Louise was still saddened by the thought of departing with Hyan, but she was still willing to try her best to survive. Hyan had observed that the assassins were coming faster than he thought. Luckily, Louise was more focused than before for responding to the threat by ascending herself. By jumping higher, Louise was able to dodge all of the assassins' melees. And for their next step, based on Hyan's plan, their real goal was to make the floor crumble. But then multiple daggers had blocked their way. He then ordered Louise to immediately jump. Moments before when Hyan was searching for a necessary item, Hyan found a ring that could block an enemy's attack. Louise activated the item by putting the ring in her finger. The item was called the Ring of Executioner. The Ring of the Executioner was instantly activated as Louise aimed against the daggers. The ring produces thousands of arrows against the assassins, but its purpose was to only slow down the enemies. Hyan also thought of using his 1-second absorption skill, combining it with the arrows produced. After they succeed with their tactics, Hyan will use all the damage to create a vision sword that became gigantic due to all damage absorbed. Due to the overwhelming power, Louise finds it difficult to hold up, but Hyan hoped Louise could handle it in order to be alive. The assassins were all confused with how Louise managed to dodge them, until the exit of the dungeon glows brighter as it slowly creates a hole. Until the game notified Hyan that Ho's level increased as Louise bursted out of the dungeon. Even though Louise managed to escape, she still got hurt from the force of bursting out. Louise was covered in bruises while Hyan got out of the assimilation. Louise wondered if they managed to succeed while Hyan was looking back at the exit with his dagger. Hyan was relieved that they managed to get the outcome they desired in the first place. But then, Hyan decided to let Louise go on by herself as he tried to stop all the assassins that wishes to go against Louise. Hyan revealed their plan in the beginning. Hyan told Louise that he'll hold off the enemies when they make it through the door. Hyan decided to sacrifice himself and drag time. He thought of the fact that non-playable characters couldn't respawn unlike the players of Asrian Online. Hyan was also proud of Louise by following the plan. Louise even managed to kill one of the assassins and knocked out the rest by handling the vision sword. Louise leveled up due to her recent battle, but then it was time for the two of them to be separated in order to follow their plan in the beginning. Louise walked away with bruises in her body. She was in sorrow that their farewell wasn't even proper. She tried to make a farewell to Hyan, but Hyan acted cold or else they'll be hung up on each other. Louise felt the guilt, especially with the thought of Hyan was prepared to die. As Louise walked away, she yelled at Hyan to remind her about the 5 years time skip in the game. Louise yelled that if she was still alive, she'll be waiting for Hyan at the secret shop. Louise hoped he'll be able to meet Hyan once again. Hyan smirked as he realized that he decided to sacrifice his life for a non-playable character that he only met a day ago. He knew Ain wouldn't believe once she heard that Hyun did all the good deeds with no rewards in return. As Hyun faces the multiple assassins, he wondered if Louise took off the ring since it'll be dangerous for her if she wore it off. With pure courage, Hyun made sure that he'll stall the time even if it were just a minute. As Louise ran away, she heard a massive explosion on Hyun's whereabouts. She had no choice but to move forward and grieve. She kept it in her mind that she'll definitely meet Hyun after 5 years. The sun slowly rises as Louise kept running away without looking back. Louise felt like it has been a couple of hours since she was separated from Hyun, yet she still hasn't found a proper place to hide. Louise remembered the time when Hyun explained to her that he is a user, which would be okay if Hyun dies in the game. But Louise still doesn't understand the nature of the players in the game. Even so, Louise knew that death still carries importance to Hyun. But despite that, Hyun sacrificed himself for Louise. Until the sun shows up. Louise kept running even though she was already tired. But Louise doesn't want Hyun's sacrifice to be wasted. Until the light met Louise's eyes. She gazes on the sun. But unusually, the sun was back. Louise gazes at it and thought that she might be hallucinating. Louise felt like she was dreaming. As she looked longer at the sun, it gave her a cozy and warm vibe until she had the urge to feel sleepy despite being desperate to move her body. The next day, in Hyun's place, he felt like he slept the entire day after he logged out from Asrian. In the end, there really wasn't a reward for the side quest that Hyun even got a 48 hours death penalty. But Hyun doesn't mind at all. He even thought of Louise's state and hoped that she escaped. Back at the game, Hyun fought with everything he had at his disposal, but in the end, he wasn't able to resist much. He pushed himself too much that his tiredness level goes to 96. As soon as he logged out in the game, he immediately fell asleep for 20 hours. Since Hyun couldn't play due to the penalty, he instead checked the community posts and saw that the arena has already been created. Hyun was actually looking forward for more details until he received a message from Ain. Their conversation goes with a little argument since Hyun broke his promise since he went on a quest without Ain. But in Hyun's case, he also felt bad that Ain wasn't able to connect that time. Ain then revealed that Hyun's level went up a bit because of the quest. She then informed Hyun that she recently finished her rank placement in the arena. On Ain's side, with an overwhelming power showed all over her body, Ain's last message to Hyun was to contact her as soon as he logged in. Ain thought about the 20 hours prior, the moment when Hyun died in Asrian and fell asleep. Ain then goes in a pub, as she wondered if Hyun would be able to log in since she won't have much things to do if she wasn't with Hyun. Inside the pub, there was a portal that leads the player into the arena. Ain couldn't believe to witness so many participants who wishes to go into the arena. She became more excited that her eyes sparked to think about the number of players who she'll battle with. Ain decided to go on a full day in the arena. The game then announced that she officially entered. Ain starts to skip around like a child thinking about doing her rank placement. Ain began to spar with other players. Since was more advanced, her victory was consistent throughout her experience that she obtained 15 battle coins, placed in Platinum 1, and was even currently among the top 1.3% of the players. While her opponent was laying and defenseless on the stage, Ain looked like a psycho as she smiled thinking about striving since she wishes to reach the level Diamond, Master, and Grandmaster. Ain reminisced her days in Asra where she has to wait 10 minutes to get on a match, but since there was a lot of participants in Asra, it didn't even take 5 seconds for her to get on a match. Ain thought of the possibilities that her would surely go up if her victory goes on. Because of Ain's 10 consecutive wins, the game activated her battle aura that will last until she loses. But there is a catch. Ain's status will decrease by 10% while the aura was active, but she will receive twice of the battle coins. Ain realized that the game gave her battle coins, then there should be a shop. Before Ain goes for the next battle, she decided to go in the arena's lobby first to check out the shop. Ain was so excited that the shop owner showed her an item that she was looking for. Unfortunately, Ain could only acquire the item if she reached the Grand Master rank with the battle coins of 690,000. Ain was deeply in shock to hear how expensive the item was. She felt so embarrassed since she only has 150 battle coins. She didn't realize how expensive it was since her time in Asra. She had plenty of battle coins. Even so, Ain desperately wanted the item. Ain believed that if she has the item, she could show how impressive she was. She wondered if it was possible for her to obtain 690,000 battle coins. In the end, Ain has her pride and even compromised herself that one day she'll be able to buy the item from the shop. Meanwhile, at the duel arena lobby, everyone couldn't take their eyes off Ain, who has a massive battle aura. While Ain was busy, her battle aura turned into purple and it even became bigger. Her current ranking was Master and even became the top 0.053% with 40 consecutive wins. Ain was consistently getting more coins due to her consecutive wins. Unfortunately, she only has had 94,520 battle coins. Due to her being addicted and kept being victory in the arena, she already reached the max level of her battle aura, which was purple, which was the second to the last powerful aura. The rest of the players were all mesmerized by her monstrously skills, while Ain kept pondering on how she could buy the expensive item from the shop. But then someone among the players recognized Ain and thought she was a dark priest. The player became more intimidated as he recognized Ain to be the one who swept away all the guilds back in Count Quest. The two players were startled when Ain disappeared all of a sudden, until they realized that Ain wasn't a non-playable character at all. Ain entered the arena. She seemed chill to think that she'll reach the Grandmaster rank in no time, until her opponent shows up. Her opponent has a green aura with 20 consecutive wins who's also in Master rank. Ain hoped her opponent shows her some interesting fight. Ain noticed her opponent to have a weird posture similar to her. Her opponent immediately dashed with his sword. Ain was impressed to see her opponent's fighting spirit. Surprisingly, her opponent changed direction in an instant. Ain realized the guy seemed to be copying some of her moves. Ain glares at her opponent who's been copying her with such terrifying look. The guy's name was called Practice, who's at level master with 21 consecutive wins. Moments before Practice entered the arena, turns out he was Yihoon. A few days ago, the Guild Stardust had an evaluation test. Yihoon won against someone in a group. All those days, Yihoon kept practicing by improving his status and by the help of analyzing Ain's battle movement. Although Yihoon thought he still wasn't perfect. But then he was able to advance to Groupa in Stardust that he even reached the level master by winning 20 consecutives. Until his luck ran out, when he finally faced the player where his moves were originated. As he faces Ain became more serious. Because of Yihoon's performance, Ain wondered if he ever played in Asra. Ain finds it impressive that someone whose first time was Asrian online played like a pro from Asra. But for Yihoon, he had clear intentions that he even asked Ain to be his friend while Ain looked at him with a teasing look. Ain made a deal that if Yihoon beats her, Ain would add him as a friend. Yihoon once again dashed and created the same moves like before, while Ain, with a chill face, handled Yihoon's attack without a hassle. As Ain successfully counterattacked Yihoon, she thought that Hyan should be the only guy friend in her friends list. Yihoon couldn't believe Ain was able to dodge all his attacks. On that moment, he sees Ain like a god devil who could read his movements. He even doubted the possibilities of him winning. Ain also noticed that Yihoon only practiced her one move, since Yihoon couldn't respond quickly after being counterattacked. Ain also noticed that Yihoon also lacked the mentality when it comes to battle that led him into a disadvantage where he couldn't read his opponent's movement. Ain tried to scare him off by telling what Yihoon's been thinking of for his next attack. Ain, with a malicious look on her face, dared Yihoon to attack again, while Yihoon still doesn't want to give up. Then Yihoon instantly decided to counterattack Ain. By the blink of an eye, Yihoon didn't saw what's coming for him when Ain instantly scathed him with Ain's claws. Even though Yihoon couldn't win against Ain, he was able to see through for a short time when Ain quickly backs out of his sword range. Ain then immediately attacked on the return step. Yihoon assures that Ain's level was on a different level. Ain gave Yihoon a daring look that assures him that he has zero chance to win. But despite knowing he'll lose, Yihoon wanted to take the chance to learn more from Ain. Yihoon did the exact moves Ain did against him. But his timing wasn't right that Ain hits him instantly, until he lost in a second that made Ain a winner with 41 consecutive. Ain realized that Yihoon also lacked in terms of control. Even though Ain won, she considered Yihoon to be the most skilled player she had fought in the arena. Meanwhile, Ain became viral again. She was the center of attraction to every Asrian players. Ain got pictures from other players while she was distracted, until she reached the 50 consecutive wins. Everyone starts to idolize her. Ain even beats up the Bishop Man who's at level 84. The Bishop Man was also known to be someone strong. But then other players began to realize that the player back in Count Quest was the same player who's dominating the arena. Meanwhile, on the Darkness Guild's side, Mayday and Piaz watched Ain's performance throughout the duel arena. Mayday and Piaz could tell that Ain's battle methods were always aggressive and frighteningly cold. Mayday finds it familiar that Ain wore the same clothes of the player who defeated them. Rina and XL also finds it familiar. Mayday had a chilling sensation as she was certain that Ain in the arena was the same player they lost against with. XL analyzes thoroughly, while Ain on the other side was busy saving her battle coins. Moments later, Piaz from Darkness Guild had reached the Grand Master level. Even so, he still couldn't get a match with Ain. Moments before, the Darkness Guild decided to meet Ain by choosing one of them to join the arena, until their meeting decided that it should be Piaz since she already reached the level master. Piaz wanted to decline, but Rina was dead serious on meeting Ain. In the end, Piaz was forced to participate in the arena in order to meet Ain. For Piaz, reaching the Grandmaster rank wasn't hard. After all, he used to be 9th in the world rankings. Piaz felt a bit embarrassed as he lost 2 times for playing back-to-back, yet he still haven't met Ain as soon as he reached Grandmaster. Piaz met multiple players over 20 times, yet he still haven't met Ain. Piaz started to get tired. She then thought of asking Rina about Ain's ranking. By her surprise, Ain was currently on level 969, which was close to Piaz's rank. Rina immediately noticed that Ain's ranking had changed and ordered Piaz to instantly join the next match. While Piaz was being teleported, he thought of the possibilities that he might have missed Ain multiple times because of Ain joining every match back-to-back. He thought of how crazy it would have been. She then thought that Ain must be the one who defeated her back then. Piaz was teleported into the stage arena where the place was filled by blizzards and snow. Piaz awaits on the stage for her next match, until Ain appeared in front of her. As soon as she faces Ain, she felt the chill down on her spine. Rina and the rest turned on their guild-exclusive stream to watch their fight. They were all excited to finally have a conversation with Ain. Ain was weirded out to see Piaz chatting with her guild members. But then they were all startled when Ain recognized Piaz to be someone who she had fought before. XL then advises Piaz to make an offer by telling Ain first that she doesn't intend to fight. Piaz did exactly what XL instructed, while Ain seemed too uninterested. On that moment, Piaz forgot his main agenda when he got curious on Ain's level. Ain then straightforwardly answered that she's currently at level 67. Rina and the rest thought Ain must be messing with them for being at a level with such powerful skills. Piaz also doesn't believe Ain to be a level 67 player. But Ain was really telling the truth. Piaz thought it wouldn't make sense since Ain showed her buff skills against them back in the ruins. But for Ain, she believed that her level was just perfect for her current state. Piaz revealed that he's currently at level 98. While XL, who watches their conversation, starts to get worried since Piaz was getting out of context. Ain was intrigued to find out that her opponent's level was quite high compared to her. But Ain could read the darkness intentions of making her join the guild, but she truthfully answered that she wasn't interested. Piaz tried to sales talk Ain by compromising on offering her such unique items and equipment, but Ain still wasn't interested because she sees the Darkness Guild to be weak. Despite having the knowledge that the Darkness Guild was known to be the strongest, Ain still declined to join. With an arrogant attitude, Ain insulted the Darkness Guild by calling them a bunch of trash. Piaz was deeply insulted and provoked. Piaz even called out Ain that she only won the fight because of her quest buffs. But Ain was not bothered at all. Ain provoked Piaz by telling her that she might be a level 67 player with debuff status. She dared Piaz to show her level 98 level to prove something. Piaz assures that she would fight against Ain without being provoked. Ain looked back with such evil smirk on her face. With arrogance in her soul, she believed it would be fun if she went against Piaz for a second time. Piaz was also furious, until the two of them quickly moved to attack one another. Meanwhile, Rina was also deeply offended and even yelled at Piaz to beat Ain. On the other hand, XL's normal gaming viewpoint was certain that Piaz and Rina was right. From XL's knowledge, the higher the specs get, the slower the speed a player will get. But still, XL felt uneasy as he watches Piaz desperately fought against Ain. Until Piaz got down on her knees, with a terrifying look on the face of Rina and the rest. Piaz once again lost against Ain. But for Ain, she thought it was a good fight. While Piaz felt deeply humiliated, she couldn't believe that someone who has a major status debuff could win against her. Until Piaz was teleported back at the lobby, and still couldn't get her head up high. On Ain's side, she finally acquired the item she was looking forward onto. Her eyes sparked as she gazes onto the item. But her main goal was to surprise Hein that she had an item which symbolizes her dominance in the arena. The item was revealed to be the Heavenly Couple's Ring, which is a unique item, which purpose was to give durability to a player's partner's soul, but the ring would be effective if the player's partner also wore the ring. Ain blushes as she thought of Hein. She makes sure to save up more battle coins to buy another one for Hein. Meanwhile, on Hein's side, all he could do was to read all the players' comments. But his penalty was finally over. He even thought if it was the right time to finally log back in. Moments before Ain reached the Grandmaster level, Tatar also joined the arena to find Ain and Hein. Tatar also just wanted to talk with Ain. With a genuine intention, he immediately got beaten up by Ain, until Tatar disappeared on sight. Later on, Hein was excited to log back in to see all the changes in the game for 5 years. As he logged in, the first thing he saw was a cinematic video. The video goes a story when in the beginning, there were two forces, the heavens and the abyss, that fought control of Asra, and divided the areas above and below the planet's surface into their territories. The heavens obtained control of the outer area, and ruled over cold and electricity, so the sky became cold, and lightning occasionally came down. While the abyss obtained control of the inner area, and ruled over heat and wind, so the planet's core was always full of heat, and wind rose from the ground as the planet rotated. The heavens and the abyss distributed their will through the transcendents and governed the world through them. But one day there was a man, and a beings called human was born. Those beings, containing an ego beyond their instinct, caught the attention of both the heavens and the abyss, but humans only looked to the heavens, with but a few gazing into the abyss. The situation happened because a human territory was a narrow margin within the influence of the heavens. The abyss became jealous that it couldn't if humans had decided to invade the surface. Transcendence with the will of the abyss appeared within the territory of the heavens. The cinematic video became unusual when it showed the censored faces of Hyan and Louise. The cinematic video continued, and it still showed the scenario when Hyan sacrificed himself for Louise, while the background audio explained it that the heavens tried to defeat the abyss greed. But in the end, the abyss managed to send their representative to the surface until peace was broken, and thus the surface world was split into two forces. As Hyan logged back in, he couldn't get the cinematic video out in his head. He was sure that the game called him and Louise the beings of abyss. Hyan wondered what was going on, until he was shocked to see his notification being full. The notification was about Hyan being successful on protecting Louise, that he gained a 15 times increased on his level. Even though there aren't any rewards, Hyan was still satisfied that his level increased. Hyan recently realized that Louise's quest was connected to the update. He even became more curious on Louise's state. But the first thing he remembered was to meet up with Louise, since 5 years had already passed. Hyan instantly went back to the secret shop and hoping that Louise will explain everything to him. Even though Hyan got a penalty for dying, he was still thankful for the time skip. Hyan roams around the room hoping to see the changes on Louise, but Louise was nowhere to be found. Hyan began to overthink that something had gone wrong, but all Hyan saw was a robe and ring that he gave Louise with a letter in it. The letter consists of Louise decided to go on a faraway place. She wrote the letter after a year, but before she left, she at least wanted to give Hyan a letter for closure. Hyan was relieved to receive an assurance that Louise was safe after all. Back then, Louise came back to the secret shop. She writes the letter short since she doesn't have any talent in writing. She then placed everything Hyan had lent her. Louise hoped that Hyan would keep his promise. She also doesn't have a place to hide the items, so she decided to put it in the shop instead, since the place was unknown by most players. Louise also wanted to write more about herself. Louise has a backstory that most people see her as a demon that the Holy Kingdom inhumanely puts a price on her. Louise became a wanted person. Even though she missed Hyan so much, she had no choice but to move to somewhere far. Back then, due to trauma, Louise couldn't remember anything from her childhood. But the only thing she remembered was the time she spent with Hyan. Louise at least got a refreshing memory that she sometimes forgot that she was being chased. Tears fell from her eyes as she hoped that Hyan felt the same way. Louise finally got up to search for a new place. In her mind, she hoped for Hyan to find her. She took a quick glance back at the shop as she reminisces her happy times. In her last message, Louise couldn't tell Hyan where she would go, since even Louise couldn't think of a place she would stay. After Hyan reads the note, a notification pops up all of a sudden for Hyan's new quest. A quest tells him to search for Louise and that there is a possibility that Louise might be dead already. Hyan finds it reckless to accept the quest, since the quest informed him that he'll get no hints or whatsoever. Despite being fully aware of the consequence, Hyan still got the urge to accept out of concern for Louise. Hyan accepted the quest, but then another notification pops up that tells Hyan that he had interfered the history and that he cannot remain neutral. Until the game decided to place Hyan in the abyss. A demonic symbol suddenly pops up on Hyan's hand. He realized that since he became part of the abyss, he won't be able to go to churches or the Holy Kingdom. But Hyan doesn't mind at all. He decided to figure things out once he started doing his quest. Hyan also realized that Louise has a big impact in the story of the game. But on his recent status, Hyan thought of the things he could do as a part of the abyss. But then Hyan remembered that the abyss was looked as an evil being's equivalent to hell and demons. Hyan realized that a lot of players might avoid the abyss. Meanwhile, at the Darkness Guild, the guild was having a meeting to decide whether they choose heaven or abyss, but Mayday fully believed that heavens would be better. But deep down, Mayday confessed that she's more attracted to the abyss. Mayday got a weird response from her guild colleagues, except from XL, who's a supportive leader. Mayday laughed as she tried to explain her reasons. She then revealed about the achievement bonuses. Turns out, Mayday saw a post that had written all the benefits of belongings to each faction. The post was written by Steel Rock, but Mayday forgot who the writer was. Mayday learned that most users, guilds, and game teams focus on the non-playable characters' help and the extra experience, and that many players think that being able to hide their faction was great. But those players' perception was proven wrong when Mayday got her status buffed because of her achievements. XL was amazed by Mayday's presentation. He learned that as the game progresses to the later half, increasing a player's level will become progressively harder. Same goes to their achievements. Mayday realized that the Abyss had a great advantage, and if many players realized her theories, majority of the players would pick the Abyss. XL thought something democrating since some of their members would most likely choose the Heavens, but he would allow at least half of their members to join the Abyss that will be led by Mayday. XL also thought that their guild needs information to both sides if they wish to remain on top. But XL was more concerned of Ain and a user that goes by a name Lattice. He felt a bit threatened since their guild doesn't know which faction they had choose. As XL mentioned Ain, Rihanna saw the look on Pia's face. Pia couldn't stop looking down as she remembered Ain. Mayday realized how troublesome it would be if Ain and Lattice chose the Abyss. But on Lattice's side, a purple glowing light shines on him as he chooses a faction. But he already made up his mind and chose the Abyss. The next day, a king appeared named Emperor Carlos. It was a meeting from both countries making an agreement to support the heavenly beings. In front of Emperor Carlos, there was the Holy Kingdom who also compromised on supporting the Heavens users. In Assyrian Online, the two biggest countries announced they would support the Heavens users. Because of their influence, the smaller countries followed their decision, and most human countries joined their forces. Many things had changed because of that, but the biggest change was access to the Empire's Knight's Road. Before the patch, the game doesn't allow users to enter the Knight's Road, but because of the Emperor's announcement, it became available to Heavens users. And on that place, users could learn from non-playable characters and also receive quests from them. The place even got a nickname, the Heavens Academy. All of a sudden, the priest was too stunned with his findings from a user. On the user's hand, he saw a perfect Heavens rune. Turns out, it was Ain who had the rune of heavenly beings, yet she was displeased. A few hours ago, before Ain chose the Heavens, she meets up with Hyan. Hyan saw the frown on Ain's face. Ain then told Hyan that her consecutive win streak was broken. The two of them catches up on each other since it's been a long time since they played together. Ain shared her tier level being on 60, and that she's now a Grandmaster. Ain also advises Hyan to increase his tier level if he wishes to participate in the Heavens quest, but Hyan thinks he'll be alright. Hyan then revealed that he's part of the Abyss, but since Hyan's faction was the Abyss, Ain decided to choose the Abyss as well, but Hyan advises her to choose the Heavens instead. Ain was deeply confused by Hyan trying to be apart from her. Ain suddenly got an emotional breakdown since Hyan wanted her to join the opposite of his faction. Ain even thought that Hyan might be seeing someone else. Ain couldn't accept the fact that Hyan will join the Abyss, but Hyan tried to calm her down by keeping a word that they won't dismantle their party. Hyan actually thought it would be advantageous if the two of them joined the opposites of each other. Hyan also thought of using the assimilation for the two of them to be together whether they're at the Abyss or the Heaven. The priest still couldn't comprehend how a normal human being got the exact rune of a heavenly being. Hyan reminded Ain to tell the priest a lie they made up earlier on. The priest became suspicious towards her. But Ain seemed to be bad at lying with her facial expressions and with the pauses in her sentences. Ain made up a scenario and told the priest that one day, a demonic monster chases her. The monster was too strong that she couldn't deal with it. All of a sudden, a man appeared in front of Ain and killed the monster with just one attack. As Ain tells her made-up story, even the guards became intrigued. Ain described the power of the man in her story to be an icy vortex. The priest instantly bought Ain's made-up story and thought Ain actually met a heavenly being. He began to be curious on the next scenario of Ain's story. Ain tells the priest that the heavenly being invited her to go somewhere, but Ain refuses since she was busy. The heavenly being in Ain's story promised that he would return for her and place his palms on Ain's head and felt like there was a foreign energy entering his body. As Ain came back to her senses, the heavenly being was gone. And with Ain's lie, that's her conclusion where she got her rune from. The priest got a tears of joy since Ain mentioned a heavenly being. He totally believed made-up story despite Ain showed unsettling body language and facial expressions. Ain was certified by High Priest Anord. The priest even announced that Ain was chosen by the heavenly beings and that she deserves a respectful interaction. The knight introduced himself to be Rudas, who will serve as Ain's guide. The two of them went along as Rudas tours Ain through the nights. While Rudas was talking, Ain asked Hyan if she did a great job at lying, but Hyan also noticed how awkward Ain spoke earlier. Hyan lectured Ain to interact with the high priest with such respect, especially the priest earlier was already old. But in Ain's defense, the priest was just a non-playable character after all. But then, Ain thinks of Hyan as someone who's good with deception. Hyan was deeply flattered with Ain's compliment. As they walked by, Hyan noticed the multiple number of non-playable characters and users. He felt like it was the new era of Assyrian. Until Rudas and Ain reached the transportation they'll use that looked like a cloud boat. Ain was appalled to see the cloud boat that allows a rider to move with the city's magic. Ain's eyes sparkle as she felt the breeze from high above. Hyun and Ain couldn't get their eyes off the overwhelming aesthetic view of the Empire Knights Road. Ain finally arrived at her destination. Rudas left Ain after he does his part as a tour guide and brought her to the 4th floor of the Knights Hall called the Free Training Room. As Ain looked around, she couldn't help but to be impressed. She even finds it better than Asra Online back then. Rudas says his farewell to Ain. Even Rudas was totally fooled with Ain's story being chosen by the heavenly beings. Since Rudas went off, Hyun got out of the assimilation to start the training with Ain. But as they enter the field, a user noticed the two of them. As Hyun explains his theories, he also noticed a user. Turns out, it was Yihun who he saw in the training room. The two of them were delighted to unexpectedly meet. The two of them complimented each other by their username, but Yihun finds it weird that Hyun took part of his name to be his username. But as they talk, Yihun noticed Ain who's giving him a jerky look. Yihun also didn't expect that Ain is in the same party as Hyun. Ain thinks Yihun was a weirdo due to his shocking reaction that Ain and Hyun works together, like it was a revelation. But Hyun lectured Ain who showed her rudeness towards Yihun. But then Yihun tried to make Ain remember that have fought before in the arena. Hyun realized that Yihun must be working hard lately to be able to reach a level where he could battle with Ain. But then Hyun heard a mumble from other users in the room. A woman with a purple hair interfered. Yihun introduced the purple-haired girl to be Jinny Nuna, who's a priest. Yihun also shared that Jinny was his closest friend in Stardust. Jinny was starstruck as she finally met the two players who's been a center of attraction in the game lately. Jinny blushes and was flattered like she was a biggest fan of the two. In the Stardust Guild, there was a coach who recently joined. He was like a mentor since he used to be an Asra Online player. The coach's knowledge of Asra was of great help to the other coaches and players. Through him, Jinny was able to learn of the achievements of the users in the previous game. Of course, those users were the two protagonists. Hyun, who reigned at the top of Asra, was like a legend, and Ain, who was a match to Hyun, someone who was exceptionally good at player versus player. The stories that surrounded the two protagonists were so grandiose that they sounded like fantasy, and even got fans like Jinny. From Jinny's perspective, it was comparable to meeting mythological beings. Yihun felt a bit embarrassed with the way Jinny approaches Hyun and Ain. Yihun told Hyun the backstory of Jinny's idolization towards them. Yihun revealed about their coach who knew Ain and Hyun, and that Jinny also studies all the dark priests and Ain's videos just like Yihun. But then Hyun heard a shocking revelation when he heard Ain replying to Jinny that she's 18. Hyun thought Ain was a middle schooler, so he kept phasing out as he glanced at her. Since Jinny was too overwhelmed, Yihun asked a favor to Jinny to keep their interaction with Hyun and Ain a secret. But Jinny couldn't help herself but to be excited and jolly. She even asked Hyun and Ain to join their guild. Hyun straightforwardly declined Jinny's offer. But Jinny couldn't shut her mouth that she mutinously asked multiple questions, while Ain was already annoyed. While Hyun was having a decent conversation with Jinny, he suddenly imagined a scenario if they have a priest in their party since there's a heaven's quest that they couldn't do. Moments before, Hyun planned to increase Ain's level so they could continue with their quest, until he met Yihun and Jinny, who has a positive opinion about them. For Hyun, their interaction with Yihun and Jinny was actually a big convenience for him that he thought of changing the plan. Hyun starts his tactics by asking Jinny and Yihun if they ever heard of a secret quest. Hyun acted like an innocent, and with a genuine intention as he asked Jinny and Yihun to join their party in order to proceed with the quest. The response of Jinny and Yihun were too humble that they felt awkward to be given a big opportunity. But Hyun insisted and acted like the hidden quest wasn't major at all. Hyun laughed maliciously like he had just successfully manipulated Jinny and Yihun. And as for the two of them, they were deeply touched by Hyun's offer. And just like that, the four of them gathered as a party and immediately went out for a quest at the last floor of the Knight's Hall. Yihun felt the heavy atmosphere as they walked past the hall. But it was just a natural sensation since their whereabouts is where the Empire's second Knight Commander was after all. While Jinny in the back analyzes Hyun for his mysterious generosity, since in Jinny's experience, rankers don't share their information. Jinny just thought that maybe Hyun really just has some impressive skills for being nice enough to share a hidden quest despite having kept first in Asra for a long time. Jinny wasn't really sure about Hyun's intentions, but she instead took the opportunity to watch Hyun's gameplay up close. But they couldn't proceed in their next step due to the tightness of security. Luckily, Hyun knows the way. Jin and Yihun observe Hyun and Ain as they assimilate. The two of them were shocked like it was the first time they discovered the assimilation skill. Hyun and Ain explained that they were just sharing a body while Yihun and Jinny got their jaws dropped. Ain asked a favor for Yihun and Jinny to wait for a while. But in Yihun's mind, he remembered Ain's gameplay where she could dodge the attacks from her blind spot. At first, Yihun thought it was just a multitasking ability that was beyond human capabilities. until it finally hits him as he connected the dots that Hyun was the reason why Ain was able to dodge the attacks from their blind spots. Back to Ain, Hyun decided to take over Ain's body by doing all the talking since Ain has no elegance with the way she speaks. Hyun dared Ain to watch his game. The guard didn't allow Ain to enter since users aren't permitted in the place. But based on Hyun's knowledge, their quest's perquisites are Grand Masters, Heavenly Beings rune, and a keyword. Hyun tried to give the guard a delightful smile, but since it was Ain's body, the way he smiles looked so creepy and viscous. Even the guard felt so off as he gazes at Ain's face. Hyun showed Ain's ID, but his aura and the way he looked just made the guard feel suspicious towards him. He was so confident, but the guard still refused to let him in. Hyun was so embarrassed, yet the guard repeated to himself that he's not allowed to enter. The two of them went back with Jinny and Heehoon, while Hyun was facing the wall with pure shame. Hyun was overthinking with what he could possibly do wrong since back in Asra, his moves were effective. But then Ain insisted on trying it out, but Hyun seemed to doubt her. Luckily, the guards have also changed so it wouldn't recognize Ain. The guards instantly blocked her from passing. But then, Ain could actually make herself look cute. Ain politely asked the guard if she could meet the commander. The guard also politely explained that the commander wasn't the type of person to meet anyone, until Ain brought up the maid story about the heavenly being Radiat who wishes to pass a message to the commander. The guard suddenly gave his ears as soon as he heard the name Radiat. Ain then showed her perfect rune, and the guard instantly bought her lie. And not even a minute had passed, yet the guard immediately let Ain enter the room. Ain even asked the guard if she could bring her partners with her. The guard lets her do as she wishes just like that. Hyun was in disbelief that Ain could actually pull a lie and act all cute. Hyun once again was humbled and impressed by Ain's performance. Heehoon comforted him that Hyun doesn't have to think deeply since Ain worked it out. They finally met the commander. Ain told the commander about her maid story of Radiat, while Hyun still thought of how Ain managed to work things out. The commander thought of the Abyss who plans more evil things with each day. Unfortunately, the commander doesn't have enough soldiers to send at the moment. Luckily, Hyun and his party's presence gave the commander an idea to give them the quest instead. The quest notification appeared where they must explore the Evil's Seed dungeon. In return, they'll obtain a reward of Heaven's Meal of Honor times 10, a skill points depending on their results, and an increase in trustworthiness. Both Jinny and Heehoon were culture shocked since it was their first time to get a quest with 10 skill points. But for Jinny, she couldn't believe Hyun wasn't a typical greedy top ranker who would just randomly give an opportunity. Even though Hyun doesn't mind sharing the hidden quest, Jinny would still be willing to give Hyun something out of gratitude as her way of reciprocation. At that moment, Jinny decided to maintain a good relationship with Hyun.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Leave a comment for the next part, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.